Being capable doesn't get you protected, it gets you volunteered. If you're watching this, you already know that you overfunction. You don't need me to explain it because your brain is already constantly running a background process called fine, I'll just do it. Mine auto starts the moment that someone says, hey, quick question, because it's never quick and it's never just a question. It's a volunteer form in disguise. You are the person who solves problems that nobody has finished explaining yet, not because you love control, but because listening to people slowly circle the point feels like torture. You are already 3 steps ahead, quietly fixing it, and by the time anyone notices, it just looked like nothing ever happened. Which means that you get 0 credit and a brand new expectation, and they get relief without accountability. What you might not have clocked yet is how much it's still charging you, even on days when nothing is actively on fire. Hey, I'm Sheila. I am not a coach. I'm not a guru. I am just a grown woman with mileage, scars, and a long history of learning things the hard way, mostly because I keep mistaking endurance for virtue. Now, I did not figure all of this out through wisdom or reflection. I figured it out the same way that you figure out a chair is broken, which is when you sit on it and you end up on the floor. This still hits me because I did not just live like this at work. I lived it in relationships, in families, in every room where being the one who could handle it made life easier for everyone else. I'm not saying this proudly. I'm saying it like someone who learned too late that being capable makes you convenient, and convenient is not the same thing as being cared for. At this point, it's not about how it started. It's about the fact that your capacity has already been written into everyone else's plan, and no one's even asking for permission anymore. You're not being requested, you're being scheduled. The realization doesn't hit you during a crisis because you're built for crisis. Oh yes, the realization hits you on a normal day when nothing technically is wrong, and you still feel completely used up. People act like capability is a compliment, but it behaves more like an all-you-can-eat buffet where you're the food and everyone just brought their own Tupperware. This is not just about work. Work is the place where this pattern gets legalized and called productivity. Now, here's the question that I want sitting in your chest while we talk today. When did being capable quietly erase your right to say no? Something needs doing, something is falling apart, or someone is overwhelmed, and you step in because you can see the solution immediately. You're not trying to control anything. You're trying to reduce friction so things can move forward. Now, you're also trying to get rid of that twitch in your left eye, and if you don't step in, everyone's just going to keep standing there acting confused until someone starts crying. And then that's going to be your fault too. I think that if I was still in corporate, I would legally change my name to Not It. Not It, Hammond. Not it. I need to put that on a shirt. At first, people are grateful. They tell you how helpful you are. They tell you how lucky they are to have you. They tell you how calming your presence is. Dude, I'm not a freaking candle. I'm not calm. I just know how to dissociate with flair. And then something shifts, right? Not dramatically, just quietly shittier. A conclusion gets drawn about you without your participation. Sheila can handle that. And right after this sentence, people vanish like a magician who just threw a smoke bomb and quietly backed out of the room and locked the door. Then it keeps happening, and it becomes obvious that this was never about one favor. This is now your personality. I've had people act surprised when I didn't do something that I never agreed to. Genuinely surprised. I once got feedback in a meeting that I seemed distant during a team lunch. I was chewing. That was the entire interaction. Apparently, I failed to connect while chewing a sandwich. We are all so damn good at making things less awkward for the people who created the awkwardness. What does not happen is reciprocity. What does not happen is protection. What does not happen is someone noticing how much you're holding. What does happen is reliance. People get used to your capacity in a way that slowly dehumanizes you. They praise your strength while leaning on it. So, how many of you have been called so strong by people actively making your life harder? They compliment your calm while benefiting from the chaos it costs you to manage. And without anyone explicitly telling you to, you start organizing yourself around their comfort. I didn't do this because I enjoyed being taken for granted. I did it because I learned early that being useful was safer than being needy. I learned that handling things made me valuable. I learned that staying composed made me acceptable. I learned that if I carried enough, I would be less likely to be abandoned, criticized, or dismissed. So I started reading the room before anyone even opened their mouth, and I absorbed that tension like a Swiffer with childhood trauma, just so other people wouldn't have to deal with it. I told myself that I was being competent. I told myself that I was being responsible. I told myself that this was maturity. I once took on a full-time project because someone said, "You're so good at wrangling chaos." Like I was a freaking horse girl for dysfunction. What I didn't see yet was how often I was trading consent for approval. Every time I said yes out of guilt instead of desire, I taught people that my limits were flexible. Every time I swallowed resentment and called it understanding, I reinforced the idea that my capacity belonged to everyone else. Eventually, my body noticed what my mouth refused to say. I was exhausted, but I felt selfish for wanting relief. I was angry, but I aimed that anger inward. I was burned out, but I treated it like a personal flaw instead of a pattern that I had been rewarded for my entire life. That's the trap. You start believing that the problem is that you're tired, not that you've been carrying too much for too long. This is not about effort. This is about identity. When competence becomes your defining trait, refusal starts to feel like betrayal. Saying no feels like you're letting people down. Rest feels irresponsible. Wanting less feels like failure. Systems love people like this. Families lean on them. Friend groups rely on them. Workplaces quietly design around them. And none of those systems rush to intervene when the cost finally shows up. Praise becomes the anesthetic that keeps the pattern running. It's like getting a gold star for not screaming when they staple more crap on your back. You're told how amazing you are just so that you won't notice how unsupported you are. This is why so many burnout veterans are not just confused about what happened, but deeply angry about how long it took them to see it. They were rewarded for self-erasure and then judged when they couldn't sustain it forever. It's like being hired as the backbone and fired for having scoliosis. Midlife is when the math finally stops working. Your nervous system stops cooperating, your tolerance for unpaid labor evaporates, your body starts saying no even when your mouth cannot. And that's not decline. That's clarity. So here's the contraband truth that they don't hand you when you're young and capable. Your ability to handle more does not mean you owe more. Your competence is not a public utility. Being reliable should never cost you your right to refuse. If a relationship, a family, or a system only works because you keep overextending yourself, then the problem is not your limits. You're not a buffet. You're not a plate. You're not the damn table. The problem is that you were never supposed to be the infrastructure. This version should feel like a warning passed quietly across the table, not a lecture, not a rant, and not a work talk pretending to be deep. You can learn to stop overperforming. You can pull back your consent. You can say no without flinching. But if you're wired like this, that reflex doesn't just die. It just changes outfits. Mine put on a halo and started calling itself hope. And that one took me out harder than burnout ever did. I'll show you what it turned into here.